Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. World Obesity Day often brings conversations about diet, weight loss, and public health. But behind those headlines are deeper questions about how our bodies work, how our brains shape our habits, and why lasting change can be so difficult. Today's guest, J Glassey, has spent decades exploring those questions. He's an exercise physiologist, gym owner, and author of Cracking Your Calorie Code, and a longtime biohacker who has been studying the science of fitness, nutrition, and brain behavior since the late 1980s. Through his work at X Gym and his research into brain wiring and motivation, PJ has developed approaches aimed at making health and fat loss more sustainable and less punishing. In this conversation for World Obesity Day, we explore what people often misunderstand about weight, motivation, and the role the brain plays in lasting health change. Welcome to the podcast, PJ.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. When World Obesity Day comes around each year, what thoughts or experiences from your decades in fitness and health research come to mind first?
Well, I guess my birthday, because I'm going to turn 60 this year. So it's about staying young, and the top 5 things that people can do to stay young are also the top 5 things that people can do for their health in general.
Yeah.
And that would be exercise is number 1. Science shows that when you're exercising, you are increasing your circulation to your brain and all your tissues. So you're perfusing everything with oxygen. And there's a lot of other reasons that exercise works, but that's the number 1. Nutrition and hydration, that would be number 2. Number 3 is quality sleep. Number 4 is training your brain. So keeping your brain healthy, because you can train your body, but you also need to train your brain. And then number 5 would be relationships to round out those top 5. So every year on my birthday, I'm reminded of those top 5 things and to keep them in perspective.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Earlier in your career as a personal trainer in the late 1980s, what moments made you realize that traditional approaches to weight loss and fitness weren't working for many people?
Well, it was when I was in college, I was getting my degree in exercise science. And that's when I learned the history of exercise. And there was a guy who invented the sets and reps method, which is the method most people are still doing. And that was back in 1891. So I thought, well, gosh, we're not still driving cars from 1891. So why are we still doing exercise from 1891?
Yeah.
So I started looking into that a little bit more and using the research that I was discovering to create experiments for my clients. They were kind of my guinea pigs at the time. And I developed a methodology that was based on that research instead of just a dude from 1891. And then came to the realization that the reason that he invented what he did and the reason that it became so popular was he was the only guy back then who was jacked. He looked like a lightweight bodybuilder does nowadays.
Yeah.
And the guys back in the late 1800s were skinny and no one was jacked. And the strong men, they were strong men back then, like circus performers. And they were really strong, but they were also really fat. And so the guys back in 1891 wanted to be jacked like Eugene and not fat and strong because Eugene was getting all the chicks. And so they wanted to get chicks too. And so they said, hey, Eugene, tell us how you got so jacked. And at first he didn't want to because he didn't want competition because he was also a strong man. He was the only jacked strong man, but he didn't want competition. He wanted to create his own competition. So finally they wore him down and talked him into selling them his methods. And so he made a lot of money doing that. And that's when sets and reps were born. And it's still great for people that want to get jacked, but it's super time consuming because you start out with traditional training at a minimum of 3 hours per week. And then if it works, you get to a point where you plateau and you have to add more time. And then you plateau again and you have to add more time. So the people who are jacked nowadays, it's a part-time job. But nowadays, most people don't want to get jacked. They want to be toned and defined and they want to have functional fitness so they can enjoy life. So that's what I developed my methods to do, is to help people look and feel fit, but not jacked. and to have a functional fitness where they could enjoy life more. And then the other reason was to reduce injuries, because traditional training is also dangerous and people get injured because it's lots of reps, so repetitive strain injury. And those reps are very ballistic, fast motions, kind of jerky with heavy weights. So it's easy to pull muscles and tendons and things. So mine is more time under tension, and it's inherently way safer than traditional training. So our people aren't getting hurt like traditional people are, and it takes way less time. So it's 21 minutes twice a week, and that's equivalent to about 7 hours of traditional training. So it's a huge time hack. So busy people can get fit without spending like a part-time job in the gym working out. And so that's why I developed my methods.
Wow. You've spent years experimenting with training methods and observing with clients. Can you share a story of someone whose approach to weight and health changed once the focus shifted away from just trying harder?
Yeah. So everybody wants to get healthier because it's been said that if someone has their health, they have no worries.
Yeah.
But if they don't have their health, they have lots of worries.
Yeah.
And health is the number one worry. So people just want to feel better and people want to be happier. And fitness will do that. And we have plenty of examples of that. And that's why I have a whole results page on xgym.com so people can go and look for that. And I just, on our YouTube channel, I just posted yesterday a new video of a couple of our women clients training with me, and how much fitness they have achieved. And they literally look like life-size action figures because they are so toned and defined and strong. And so there's tons of examples. We've been doing this. I opened the X Gym in 1998. There's been a lot of time, a lot of decades that we've been doing this. And along the way, we've gotten some great results. And people can see that on our Google reviews and Yelp reviews too, as well as our results page. The most satisfying testimonials to me that I hear are the people that come back and tell me stories. For instance, our golfers will come back and say, hey, something really weird happened. So all my recent life, I've been golfing in the 90s. Now all of a sudden I'm golfing in the 80s and I haven't changed anything. And I'm going, yeah, that's because your nerves have been trained because of the controlled motion and our mindful movement at X Gym. So you're more coordinated. Or our skiers will come in and they'll say, hey, it used to be that when I would ski down a hill, I would have to stop 2 or 3 times to rest. But now I go further down the hill before it starts to burn. And then I know that the burn isn't something that should stop me. So I just keep going and I ski way better because I have more control. Or the soccer players or the tennis players, and it's just the precision. So those are my favorite stories to hear from people.
Wow. Your work often emphasizes the brain's role in fitness and fat loss. When did you first begin to see that habits, motivation, and brain wiring were as important as exercise itself?
Yeah, the brain is actually the most important thing to get lasting results. Anybody can get yo-yo results. What I mean by that is the yo-yo diet. Yeah,
What's that?
They lose weight and then they gain it back, and they lose it and they gain it back, or they get strong and then they stop for some reason and they lose their muscle and they get weak. And then they get strong again. Well, the subconscious brain is the boss of us. So that's the first thing people need to realize, that you're not really in control of yourself, of your conscious self, because your subconscious is. The subconscious operates at about the level of a 3-year-old. So a toddler's in charge. Now, the good news is we have an adult part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, but that takes work. And that part of the brain can train the toddler. So, and anything that works on a toddler will work through the prefrontal cortex on our subconscious brain. So we're using our prefrontal cortex, which I call the PFC, to train the toddler and raise the toddler. So the toddler being in control of us will help us instead of work against us, because toddlers love status quo. They don't like change. They love comfort. And so once we start training, the toddler's going to try to talk us out of it, or the toddler might even make us forget to go work out. The toddler isn't going to want to help us establish a new habit because that's change. That's changing the brain. The toddler loves comfort. The toddler would rather sit at home with a bag of chips watching TV. And so what we do with the prefrontal cortex is to retrain and rewire the toddler. And we do that through specific techniques to kind of almost almost punk the toddler. So what we're doing is we're tricking the toddler, because toddlers are pretty easy to trick.
Yeah.
And they're pretty easy to convince of certain things. And so there are lots of brain training techniques that can be done to rewire that toddler in a gentle way. So we're accepting it as part of us, and we're raising it as if it's our own toddler in a kind way. And that's why I developed my brain type test, because I'm not just trying to get people toned and defined and functionally fit. I'm trying to get people healthy, and I'm trying to help them achieve that health permanent, so it lasts forever. The only way to do that is to change their brain. And I can't do it for them. They have to do it. And so that's why I invented the brain type test, so they can take this 20-question quiz and determine which brain type they are, and then get specific brain training techniques to rewire their toddler, so their toddler is enthusiastically helping them in their project instead of sabotaging them in their health project. And the reason that people yo-yo is because their body changes, but their brain doesn't.
Yeah.
And if you think of like a scale where the body's improving, and so that part of the scale is going up, but the other part of the scale is staying the same, well, then visualize a rubber band between those two parts. It just gets tighter and tighter as the body improves, because the brain stayed down there staying the same. And then when they glitch, or when they take a day off, or when they achieve their goals and go, oh great, I did it, and then they start to relax, then the brain will snap them back down. And that's where the yo-yo is. It'll take all that progress away. But if they are changing their brain by rewiring their brain along the way as their body is changing, then when they get to their results, their brain is different too. There's no tension rubber band. It's just straight across. And now they stay that way. And in fact, if they did backtrack, it would be easier to get back up, to get the improvements back, because their brain is different, and they think and act differently because their brain is different. You look at any Olympic athlete, their brain is different than an amateur. They think differently, they act differently, they feel differently. And they're literally obsessed, which is a good thing, for their career, maybe not for their personal life, but their career. They actually surveyed Olympic athletes, and they said, hey, if you could take a drug that would kill you in 7 years, but guarantee you a gold medal now, would you do it? And over 3/4 of them said yes. So that's obsession. Yeah. Wow. But their brain isn't just obsessed. It's also different. So if they did a functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, their brain would look different than somebody who has not achieved what but you can look at any other part of the life. Warren Buffett's brain is different than somebody who loses money all the time in the stock market. So it's just, they've rewired their brain consciously or unconsciously. And New Year's resolutionaries, I call them, 2%.
Can you say that again?
New Year's resolutionaries.
Oh, wow.
those are the people that take New Year's resolutions and have unclear and unrealistic goals, and they don't achieve them. 95% by the end of that year have not achieved their goals, and another half of them won't keep those goals permanently. So the 2.5% that do keep their goals permanent have unwittingly changed their brains and rewired their brains along the way without really knowing they're doing that. But my brain type test is designed to help people to wittingly do it, to consciously do it, so they can be in that 2.5% where they can get the results they want and then keep them for life and not experience that yo-yo.
Wow. In your research across exercise science, nutrition, and brain science, what connections do you see between brain health, metabolism, and weight?
What connections do I see between brain health and the body?
Metabolism and weight.
Metabolism and weight. Yeah. So brain health is, I actually talk a lot about that because my mom died from early onset Alzheimer's back in 2005. And so she was diagnosed in 2000, but my sister and I knew that she had some form of dementia way back in 98. And so we researched everything deeply to try to help her. But back then we didn't know enough. And unfortunately, but now we do. So I've never stopped researching it. And I've come up with 5 steps that are very similar to the steps I already told you, just a little bit different, but mostly the same because it's just getting healthy. And so brain health is so important because when we do prioritize brain health, then we're in the right mind and we stay motivated, we stay energetic, and we can think clearly, and our prefrontal cortex, which I mentioned earlier, is very healthy. And the job of the prefrontal cortex is to help us make good decisions. So, those people that run around and it just seems like their life is a mess and they're a constant train wreck and it's almost like they're trying to make the wrong decisions. Well, those
Yeah.
people have a very weak prefrontal cortex and they're probably very emotional because their amygdala is running the show instead of their prefrontal cortex. And it's like a muscle, use it or lose it. So their PFC is really weak, amygdala is really strong. But then the people who are using brain training techniques and focusing and doing meditation and things that are really good for their prefrontal cortex, now they have a really strong PFC. They're not affected emotionally because their amygdala has atrophied. And so most of their time is spent in their PFC and out of their amygdala. And those people also can have more discipline because willpower is also found in the PFC and they can achieve things. So it's partly it's just training the PFC and having a really healthy brain by being a really healthy person.
Yeah.
And then metabolism, there's a lot of aspects to metabolism. And one of them is, the short-term aspect to metabolism is moving. Because when you're moving, you have a higher metabolism because you're burning calories. And when you're moving, you're also feeding your mitochondria and you're feeding oxygen to your muscles. So your mitochondria are little organelles within your cells. And every mitochondria has its own little energy factory. So the more you have, the higher your metabolism. And the healthier those little mitochondria are, the higher your metabolism. So there's that, it's endurance. And then strength with the muscle mass. Muscle is very high maintenance tissue. And even when you're sleeping, you're burning more calories because you have this high maintenance tissue on you. But you have to move to earn it. And so you earn healthier and more mitochondria and you earn more muscle with movement. And movement with like cardio movement is great for mitochondria. And strength training is great for muscle mass. Now at X Gym, it's more about muscle density than muscle mass. So we get denser muscles at X Gym because we're doing endurance and strength training at the same time, which no other gym or method is doing that. They have to separate out those workouts. So because of that, that's why people don't get jacked. They just get toned and defined with denser muscles. So they still gain muscle weight, but it's not bigger muscle. It's denser muscle. And so then because of that, their metabolism goes up, not just because of the mitochondria, but also they're gaining muscle. And then with the rest of it, it's just combining all of that, combining the habit, and you create those habits because of the exercise. And because of the exercise, your metabolism goes up.
Wow. Oftentimes when people talk about weight, the last thing that comes into the conversation is the brain. And, from what you said so far and from my observation, it's easy. Anybody can lose weight. The problem is keeping keeping it that way, right? Looking at the way obesity is discussed publicly today, what part of the conversation feels incomplete to you?
Mm-hmm. So weight is an interesting thing. And the insurance companies use the BMI, body mass index, to determine if somebody is insurable or not. And that's just basically weight and height. It's a math formula. And that works on most people, but there's outliers. So if you measure a bodybuilder, he's going to be over the BMI and he's not going to be insurable, or he's going to have to pay more. Even though if he's a natural bodybuilder, he's super healthy.
Yeah.
And so that's flawed. And so scale weight doesn't really tell you much. At X Gym, we have a $12,000 scale that also determines muscle, and it shows you where that muscle is. So it segments you into right arm, left leg, and trunk. So we can see that muscle changing. And that's what really matters. And so if you are skinny fat, like say you are within the BMI, but you just sit down all day and you don't do anything and you don't really have any muscle to speak of, and you're really weak, but you're within that weight, well, you're going to be super unhealthy. You're actually going to be less healthy than someone who's overweight that does exercise. And so now the insurance company on the other end is screwing themselves. So they screwed themselves with the healthy natural bodybuilder. Then they screwed themselves again with the skinny fat people. And so it's really not a good metric to use that BMI. And the scale really doesn't mean much because some people naturally have more muscle just because of their genetics. And all the rest of us that don't have those genetics are always jealous of them. And then there's some people who are extra skinny, ectomorphs, and they have a really hard time gaining muscle and fat. So it's great that they have a hard time gaining fat, but what comes with that is they have a hard time gaining muscle too. So genetics plays a big part in that, and your workout can adjust to your morph type. And then the mesomorph is in the middle. That's most of the bodybuilders out there, where they can gain and lose fat and muscle pretty easily, and so that plays into it. But so what I tell people is, don't really go by the scale, go by your waist circumference. And there's plenty of tables you can look up, just Google it or AI it about tables. And the waist circumference is the most important, but they also have tables that compare waist circumference to chest and waist circumference to hips. So for men, the waist circumference to chest is more important. And for women, the waist circumference to hips comparison is more important, because we store body fat differently. And so I tell people to not care about weight. But it also depends on your brain type. So I have the brain type that does care about my weight, but I have achieved my goals. I have achieved how I want to look. I have achieved how I want to be functionally strong. I'm still trying to get stronger, because that's always I don't want to just stay the same.
Yeah.
But because of my genetics, I've kind of reached my genetic attic right now, meaning I'm at the top of my genetic. So if I wanted to go past that, I'd have to take steroids and growth hormone, and I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah.
So now, because I've kind of reached my limit, then I can still get stronger, and my muscles can get denser, and they are, and that's great. But my weight's probably not going to change that much. So just out of habit, I step on my scale every couple days, and just to make sure. And I vary about 5 pounds. So between 170, 175. If I step on it and I'm 169, I'm going to eat more that day. And then, because I'm happiest between 170, 175, which is about 8 or 9% body fat. If I get too low, I'm cold all the time and my energy goes down. If I hit 175, then I adjust my nutrition and my exercise to come back down. Because if I get over that zone, then I also don't feel the best. And, my belt's is a little bit tighter and I'm a little more sluggish. And so I found that is my zone that I stay in. And so I weigh myself frequently to stay in that zone. And then I don't even have to step on our BEI scale at the gym, because I actually know what percentage I am, because I've done it so many times. So many years. And so I tell people, don't obsess about your weight unless you're like me and you've reached your goals and you want to stay there and you know your zone really well and you want to stay in your zone. Then it's accountability. But otherwise, or maybe once a week, step on the scale once a week, because some people don't really realize that that things are getting out of hand.
Yeah.
They wear loose clothes, they wear sweats all the time, or maybe they're in denial, or they have body dysmorphia or something like that. And they need an objective measurement to bring them back to reality. So if that's your brain type, then you do need to weigh more. But if that's not, and you don't yo-yo a lot, you don't change a lot, and you're pretty consistent, then it might just make you crazy, because especially for women, they retain water a lot more than men. And so their weight will fluctuate. It can be 10 pounds in a day. And for men, it can be a couple. And it depends on when you weigh yourself too, because when I weigh myself at night, I'll come in at 174. Then when I wake up in the morning, I'm 172, because I've gone to the bathroom, but I've also breathed out about a pound of water vapor during the night, during my sleep, because I'm not drinking water when I'm sleeping. Yeah. And so I'm lighter in the morning. And so you want to make it consistent so that doesn't drive you nuts. Yeah. But there is normal fluctuation that's okay. It's the trend that you want to catch. So you adjust your frequency of stepping on the scale based on your personality, brain type, how you want to, how consistent you want to be and stay.
Oh, thank you so much, PJ, for chatting with me about weight and obesity. Where can listeners learn more about the work you're doing and also connect with you?
Well, it's easy for me. It's just xgym.com, xgym.com. And then all my stuff is on there, all the socials and the brain type test and my book and the X Gym and how we train people at the Kirkland Club and how we train people online all over the world and how we have our worldwide app on there. So it's just all in one hub, one spot, xgym.com.
Okay, I'll put the link in the description so listeners can click and go there to the site. Once again, thank you so much, PJ. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you.
Thank you, Wisdom. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.